NATO just told its members to spend 5% of their GDP on defense. Estonia is already there. The US is close. On paper, that sounds like an alliance getting stronger by the year. But that number is hiding NATO's actual problem, and it's not about money at all. Here's what's really going on. Back in 2014, at a summit in Wales, NATO countries agreed to a simple target: spend 2% of GDP on defense. For years, most countries didn't even hit that. Then in 2025, at a summit in The Hague, the goal jumped dramatically: 3.5% of GDP on core defense, plus another 1.5% on security-related spending by 2035. More than double the old target, and a real sign of how much the threat picture has changed. Heading into this year's summit in Ankara, Turkey, the spending numbers looked good on the surface. European allies and Canada increased their combined defense budgets by nearly 20% in a single year. Some countries are blowing past the target entirely. Estonia's prime minister said his country is already investing close to 7% of GDP in defense, hitting the goal 9 years ahead of schedule. So if the money's flowing, what's the problem? Look closer, and the picture splits in two. While Estonia sprints ahead, other major allies are stuck. France, Italy, and the UK are hitting real financial obstacles trying to increase their budgets. Spain has pushed back against the 5% target altogether, and Czechia's spending this year could actually fall below the old 2% benchmark, going backward, not forward. The pressure isn't just coming from within the alliance either. At a NATO defense ministerial in Brussels this year, the US Secretary of Defense publicly criticized several member countries for failing to show a credible path toward their spending commitments, while acknowledging others had made real progress. He also announced a 6-month review of US military presence in Europe, which puts even more pressure on the burden-sharing question. So even the spending numbers themselves aren't the unified success story they're made out to be. But here's the deeper issue, and it's the one almost nobody's talking about. Spending more money does not automatically make an alliance stronger. Defense analysts have pointed out something important. A country that spends 3% of its GDP wisely can add more real military strength to NATO than a country spending 5% poorly. It's not about the size of the check. It's about what that money actually buys: real capability, equipment that works, forces that are ready to deploy. Take Poland as an example. Poland's military modernization didn't start because of a spending target announced last year. It started back when Poland joined NATO in 1999, picked up pace after Russia invaded Georgia in 2008, accelerated again after Crimea in 2014, and accelerated even further after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. That's what a real threat-driven strategy looks like, built over 2 decades, not assembled to hit a percentage by a deadline. President Trump has pushed hard for the 5% figure, and more defense spending is genuinely overdue for a lot of these countries. But treating one number as the measure of whether NATO is getting stronger swaps out real strategy for basic accounting. A country can technically hit its target and still not be meaningfully more prepared for a crisis. Ukraine adds another layer to this. Allies have already pledged tens of billions of dollars in military aid, including a recent $60 billion pledge. But when it came to setting a formal target, asking members to commit 0.25% of GDP specifically to Ukraine, that proposal was rejected by Canada, France, Italy, Spain, and the UK. Even on the one issue where the alliance claims total unity, the numbers tell a messier story. And that leads to the real structural problem underneath all of this. NATO doesn't just need more military hardware sitting in more countries. It needs those countries' militaries to actually work together. Right now, NATO's collective defense looks more like a patchwork than a single system. 32 different countries, 32 different procurement decisions, 32 sets of equipment that don't always talk to each other. A disconnected patchwork of national capabilities can't deliver the kind of fast, coordinated response an alliance needs in an actual crisis. Building a defense system where European militaries can genuinely fight side by side isn't a nice-to-have anymore. It's becoming essential. That's the real story behind the headlines out of Ankara this year. It's not just, is everyone paying enough? It's whether 32 separate militaries, spending money in 32 separate ways, can actually function as one alliance when it matters. So here's the honest answer. NATO isn't weak, but its strength isn't really being measured by the number politicians keep repeating. The real test isn't how much each country spends. It's whether all that spending adds up to a force that can actually move, respond, and fight together. That's NATO's real problem. Not money, coordination.